Hello YouTube, this is another update by Casual Carrier for our segment Hail the King, Chapter 7. The story is really starting to pick up now, so stay tuned. Chapter 7, Failing Defense Line. Camboard Castle. Everyone's ears were filled with mournful screams and loud battle cries. Both the attackers and defenders were giving the battle everything they got. It was either you die or I die. Waves of enemies who were wearing black light armor were charging at the castle like a black tsunami. 3 large siege ladders were like war monsters, the barbs of the ladders hooked on the edge of the battlements, constantly sending more enemies to fight the defenders on the walls. The hooks made the siege ladders hard to get rid of, and the squad of around 30 enemies were fighting aggressively to protect the ladders. As time went on, more and more enemies had gotten to the walls of the castle. It was not a good situation for Camboard Castle. There were 10 times more enemies than the Camboard soldiers. Pierce! Pierce, where are you? You son of a bitch! A huge 6'8" man who had black hair and was wearing a vest of chainmail turned back and yelled as he was slashing at an enemy. Pierce, pick some big guys and get rid of those fucking ladders, quick! Yes, sir. Not too far away, white-haired Pierce was soaked in blood. It was already hard to tell what was his and what was from the enemies he had slain. As he had heard the command, he waved at a couple soldiers close to him. Come on, guys, let's go! We have to kill those motherfuckers and smash those ladders! White-haired Pierce was known in Camboard for his brutal strength. As his veins in his arm bulged and he started swinging his huge iron hammer that was the size of 2 basketballs, like the legendary berserker, he cleared off his enemies as if they were flies. None of the enemies could stop him. He was approaching the siege ladders fast and leaving behind him a road of death and blood. About 20 other soldiers followed him. They were committed on completing the mission. The enemies that were defending the ladders had been alerted. Attention! Forward! Semi-arc formation! The leader of the enemy defense team yelled. Kata, kata, kata. The 30-ish enemies had formed a half circle behind the wall, beside the wall, and protected the 3 siege ladders in a half circle, with sharp blades that were still dripping blood pointing outward. They were like a metal hedgehog, waiting for the attackers to make a mistake before capitalizing on it and finishing them off. These enemies definitely had more training than the soldiers of Camboard. 10 meters, 6 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. The distance between the soldiers led by Pierce and the enemies were vanishing in seconds. Finally, go to hell! Pierce suddenly yelled. He gave the hammer a full swing as if it was a javelin. The hammer flew out of his hands and flew toward the enemy formation. That giant bloody hammer made a beautiful trajectory of death in the air and crashed through the defense formation with devastating force. Bash! It caused massive damage to the enemies. Spilled blood, broken blades, and limbs flew all over the place. The enemies definitely weren't expecting that type of maneuver. The flying hammer had made a bloody gap in the center of the formation. By destroying the 3 siege ladders, the enemies will have no way to get on the Camboard Castle for now. After killing all the enemies that got on the defense wall, the soldiers could finally get some time to rest in safety. If not, the castle will be besieged, and all their friends and families will become war slaves with no hope of freedom for generations. After thinking about that, all the soldiers were motivated to defeat the enemies. Their morale was so high that the blood of their bodies were almost burning. They couldn't allow the enemies to siege the castle. Even if they died, they weren't going to back off. Charge! Charge! The soldiers followed Pierce, furiously charging the enemies. Pierce rushed ahead, picked up the hammer they had thrown out before any enemy could react, and started smashing away. His powerful swings forced off all the close enemies, with the closest one not even having time to react before Pierce collapsed his head. None of them could stop him. Smash! Crash! Bang! Clank! Weapons, armor, and bare knuckles were colliding. Spurting blood and detached limbs had painted the picture of hell. Boom! Pierce smashed the sword and the enemy in front of him off the castle. He looked up and the ladder was right in front of him. He swung the hammer once and more to back off the approaching enemies. Dang, dang, dang! He sprinted forward, smashed all the hooks off the one ladder. Fuck off! Pierce kicked the ladder with force. He heard a lot of screams as the ladder fell down. The enemies who were climbing all fell toward the ground like dumplings. They were crushed by the heavy ladder into a bloody meat paste, instantly. Nice! The black-haired commander saw what Pierce had done and yelled, Pierce, great job! 2 more! Finish them all and I'll buy you the best beer tonight! All you can drink! He was dueling with a thin but tall enemy while he yelled, The enemy was very skilled. Although he was a commander, they were combating for about 10 seconds, and none of them had an advantage. Haha, Brooke, boss man, the beer is on you tonight, Pierce replied excitedly. Although he was talking, he wasn't slow with his attacks. His hammer was fast as lightning. He did the same thing as he did to the first ladder. Ding, ding, ding! He smashed all the hooks off the second ladder, and as he was about to kick off the wall, suddenly, die, punk! A black shadow flew up the defense wall. The rapier this enemy was using went straight to Pierce's head. He was trying to instantly kill Pierce. There wasn't much time for Pierce to react. All he had to do was to position his hammer so that his head was protected. Ding, ding, ding! These couple of strikes all hit right in the center of the hammer and made some sparks. An unstoppable force passed through the hammer and shocked Pierce. Even though Pierce was born with an inhuman strength, he couldn't hold against it. The force pushed him back 4 steps. It also broke a couple of his fingers, and he almost couldn't handle the hammer anymore. Shit, a master! Pierce was surprised. However, the enemy stopped attacking him. As this enemy raised up the rapier again, Pierce heard a ton of screams. The enemy was moving so fast that he turned into a black shadow again. The other soldiers who had come with Pierce all fell to the ground. As it took a more detailed look, all of them had a hole in their heads. White red liquid were flowing out. They were their brains. Bender, Bond, Tony, my brothers! Pierce cried. He couldn't take what he saw, almost fainting from shock. His best friends who were having fun with it last night at the bar, he was trusting and loving a moment ago, had been killed right in front of him. He felt like the sky had fallen down. Die, demon! Pierce yelled. He forgot about the wounds in his body. He stared at the enemy, gave up all attempts at defense, and charged ahead. This enemy had left more nasty wounds on Pierce's body, and Pierce couldn't even touch him. But Pierce didn't care. He just kept swinging on. He kept on swinging his hammer. Haha, that's no use. This enemy laughed. He sounded like a crow. The rapier was too fast, and this enemy was too strong. This enemy moved again. The rapier was aiming at Pierce's head again. Pierce tilted his body as if he was trying to dodge a strike, but the rapier went through his right shoulder easily. This enemy smiled disdainfully. He was going to pull out the rapier and end Pierce's life, but he was surprised to find out that he couldn't pull out the rapier no more. Blood spurted out of Pierce's mouth, but this white-haired man started laughing happily. The enemy didn't know what was going on, but he felt as though he had underestimated the enemy. But there was no time for him to react. Pierce grabbed the blade tightly with both hands, as if he didn't feel any pain. He left the rapier in his shoulder and slammed his body against the enemy. It took the rapier-wielding man by surprise, and he had to keep backing off. It only took him 3 seconds to reach the tip of the defense wall. If this enemy backed off any further, he would fall off this 200-foot-high wall, even though he was powerful, but there's no way for him to stay alive after falling from such a height. Fuck! This enemy was ferocious, but he had no option but to let go of his rapier. Getting forced by a low-life soldier to let go of his favorite weapon, this enemy was ashamed of himself. He was a prestigious 1-star warrior. After he let go of the rapier, red flames started appearing around his body. Fists with a temperature that could melt iron landed on Pierce's back. He would eat this white-haired man alive if he could. Ha ha ha! I won this round, you son of a bitch! Pierce puked a mouthful of blood, and he was laughing proudly. Pierce let go of the rapier and charged at the second siege ladder. Because he had broken the hooks on the ladder earlier, he slammed it off the wall with his left shoulder. All the enemies climbing on this ladder fell to the ground and got crushed in a pile of meat paste as well. Shit, you low-life slave! I swear I will kill everyone in this castle! This enemy was raged. Now he knew that this man wasn't trying to push him off the wall. The plan was to destroy the second siege ladder all along, and he was fooled. He struck with the rapier at Pierce with all he got. Pierce had fainted from all the wounds and bloodlust. Shit, be careful, Brooke, the commander yelled anxiously. There was nothing he could do. He was still in combat with the other skillful enemy. This siege battle had taken almost a whole day, and there were some powerful individuals in Camp Ordside, but they had been focused on by the enemy commander. Even the 3-star warrior Lampard was tangled by the enemy star-ranked warrior. At this time, there was no one that could save Pierce's life. The rapier, covered in flames, was only 1 inch away from Pierce's neck. And that's the end of the chapter. Thanks for listening in, folks. Be sure to like and subscribe, and more importantly, have fun reading and listening to these stories. If you'd like any of your favorite web novels and or fan fiction to be turned into an audiobook, just let us know in the comment section below. See you guys next time, and thanks for listening.